At a high-tech solar panel plant, a scientist sets out what we could be doing.
There's enough sun in the UK to power the full country. So I think we need to... Yes, yes.
Enough sun in the UK to power the country?
Yeah.
Even when the sun doesn't shine?
No, it's even when it doesn't shine.
Really?
Yeah.
Today, the government insists it's taking big strides now towards greening our energy. But is it? Forced by the High Court to produce a net zero plan that works today, the big idea? Carbon capture. Here's the difficulty. Science says carbon capture isn't proven at scale, and there must be no new oil and gas drilling in the North Sea to meet our net zero legal obligations. But the Prime Minister is having none of that.
Today we're announcing more investment in renewables like offshore wind, reviving the nuclear industry, developing new industries like carbon capture and storage. And as we deliver on that, we're going to create jobs across the country, we're going to increase our energy security, reduce people's bills and reduce our carbon emissions.
The idea is store carbon in natural caverns beneath the North Sea to offset emissions from new oil and gas drilling here. This week, 700 scientists wrote to the Prime Minister asking him to stop any new drilling.
Every pound blown on new fossil fuels is a pound not invested in energy security generated through renewable power. And it's actually even worse than that. Not only is it a missed opportunity, it's actually an additional pound spent on making the climate problem worse. We don't have time for that.
Balancing its refusal to end North Sea fossil fuels, however, the government has announced a slew of renewable energy initiatives, making offshore wind farms easier to build, so too domestic heat pumps, and improving the charging network for electric vehicles.
Rolling out existing technologies and bringing transformative new technologies to market. We're truly on the verge of a new industrial revolution.
But with little new money, Labour and some Tory critics say the green measures don't come near to meeting what science demands.
This is not the Green Day they promised, but a Groundhog Day of re-announcements, reheated policy and no new investment.
Today's prime ministerial photo op was a nuclear fusion research plant in Oxford. Green energy that simply doesn't exist yet for us all. Yesterday we too were in Oxford, with green energy that actually exists, ready to roll. PPE essential in this testing lab for a UK breakthrough in harvesting sunshine into power.
In a very simple way, what we do is, with our panels, we can generate 20% more electricity than conventional panels.
Sun simulators as they test the tech here in the UK. But the manufacturing and green jobs their invention has created have been set up in Germany, where investment conditions, they say, are better.
We don't actually manufacture and produce the solar panels or the blades or the wind turbines here in the UK. Instead, we import them from Europe. We're miles ahead on the science, but miles behind on production.
So here you have it, world-beating, cutting-edge technology right here in Oxford, in the heart of the UK. But of course in the UK we still build our houses without solar panels. Outdoor car parks don't have solar panel roofs, nor do the roofs of our warehouses. And if you want to build a solar array in the countryside, planning regulations make that virtually impossible.
And that, the great UK solar jam, is what the government now appears ready to unblock. But delivery is everything. As for the energy plan as a whole, watch for legal action. Today's announcement only happened because the government was forced by the High Court to revamp its policy by midnight tomorrow because it's failing to meet its legally binding net zero target. The government says this is the big fix. The courts may yet disagree again.
Well, now our climate reporter Simon Roach is with me now. Simon, big noise, a lot of noise, 1,000 pages this was or more. What's new?
Well, I think it was 3,000 pages in the end.
I stand corrected.
One of the many criticisms of today was that it was a lot of recycled policy announcements and money from before. So I decided to actually take a look at this. Now, if you look behind you, the details of this are not that important. It's a string of policies that the government said were major. I found that just one of those was actually completely new. So the bottom line...
Only one?
Only one of all of those. And these are the major policies that the government picked out. So look, a lot of numbers were being thrown around today. But in terms of new state investment to help us in this green transition, there was virtually nothing new. Now, these were only the major headlines. There are some good policies in there that will help the energy transition, like this planning reform for renewables that will help solar projects. The outcome in terms of where we actually go towards net zero and all this, well, around midday, beneath lots of the other facts and figures the government put out, it released a very technical policy paper that said, by our own calculations, none of what we're announcing today actually still puts us on a path for our climate targets. So the government says we're on a path to net zero, but right now its own figures don't actually back it up.
OK, well, they could be back in court over that one. As always, it's all about money. The EU, the US moving massive amounts of money into the new green economy. Where does this leave us?
Well, I think to understand this political context of the lack of new cash, you have to look at something else that the Chancellor said today, where he said, I've looked at what the EU and the US are doing. Right now, I don't want to go toe-to-toe to them on subsidies. His critics will say that the UK really does risk being left behind in what essentially is a competitiveness race. Now, people might say this is a cost of living crisis. It's right that the government aren't footing up a load new green investment, but it's really worth pointing out that the reason people's energy bills have been so high is our reliance on fossil fuels, and we need to break away from that, go towards this cheap renewable energy if we want to break that cycle.
OK, we'll see where we go. Well, earlier I caught up with the Conservative MP Chris Skidmore, who led a major consultation exercise last year to produce recommendations for the government on how best to move the UK's economy towards net zero. So what did he make of today?
Well, I think looking at the overall package, and it's 2,500 pages worth of material, so it's going to take some time to digest, that we have definitely seen progress being made today. The government has made sort of firm commitments on electric vehicles, on moving forwards with removing gas boilers for the future, on new nuclear, on renewable power. All this is welcome. What I would say, however, is does it add up to that sort of big moment that we were all expecting? I'm not sure it does. There's not much new money or investment that is in this package today. But I do welcome the fact that the government is taking forward 23 out of the 25 key recommendations in my Mission Zero Net Zero Review report. It's just simply we can't expect that this will be job done.
One example of the list you gave there of green initiatives, 30 million on house insulation. By common consent, we need billions into this, don't we? This is nowhere near what the UN and global science is saying we need to do.
Yeah, that's right. So I think when it comes to understanding the best way we can save energy and also decarbonise is to look at the energy we shouldn't be wasting. First and foremost, we need a national retrofit strategy. We've got signals that we're moving in that direction with the extension of a boiler upgrade scheme until 2028. It was going to due to close shortly, and that will allow people to access heat pumps.
But this is nowhere near a national strategy, is it?
We need to go further, absolutely. We need to recognise that we have to have an energy demand strategy, a national mission, as I spoke about in the Net Zero Review. And I'm keen that the government pushes forwards with this. But you're right, it doesn't touch the sides of what's needed to insulate and decarbonise 20 million homes across the UK.
Let's go to the big idea today, is that carbon capture, government seems to think, is where it's at. Carbon capture on the one hand, which will allow us by offset to drill more oil and gas. The science is clear. Carbon capture at scale simply doesn't exist, and drilling more oil and gas is something we cannot do. This is fundamentally flawed then, isn't it?
The challenge is that when it comes to carbon capture, this is a technology we will need. The UN and the International Energy Agency have both said that we're going to have carbon capture if we want to have net zero. But that should be for existing industries, the hard to decarbonise industries that exist at the moment. It is simply not possible to achieve our net zero commitments by opening up new oil fields. It is not possible to achieve net zero by opening up new coal mines. So to try to suggest that somehow carbon capture can be used to mask the future production of fossil fuels, is a false narrative.
Indeed. Well, you've been very clear. No new oil and gas drilling in the North Sea, no coal mining in Cumbria. Let's come on land. We need to lift the ban on onshore wind farms, don't we?
Yes, we do. And we have paid the price for not recognising the opportunity that onshore wind could have driven the reduction in energy bills over the past decade. So we've got to be able to get the planning system right, and they've recognised that needs to happen today. So that is welcome.
Right, but the wider problem surely here is your government simply don't get it. You yourself have called what President Biden is doing on green initiatives groundbreaking. What the EU is doing, groundbreaking. This is the stuff science demands. Yet the Chancellor is saying, well, what Biden's doing is wrong, it's protectionist.
The rest of the world, as you say, are recognising the economic opportunity that net zero provides. We've got a new economy that is emerging globally, and the risk is obviously by a delay in inaction that money will simply go elsewhere. So whatever politicians say today around how great the announcement is, markets will decide. There are now new net zero markets in place. Decisions will be made in boardrooms across the world about where to place that investment. I want that investment in the UK. I see net zero as the economic opportunity of this century.
Chris Skidmore, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
We did, of course, ask for an interview with the government minister, but we're told nobody was available.